changing out the cam belt, water pump and tensioner, etc. on a Skoda Fabia Mark 1 1.9 pump juice ATD engine 2003. Looking at the cam belt change interval on this car, being the 1.9 diesel ATD engine, it says to change it out every 60,000 miles, and then again it says to change it out every 80,000 miles, albeit along with the guide pulley for the camshaft. Either or, mine hasn't been changed out for about 80,000 miles, so as I'm doing a long trip shortly, I thought it was about time I changed it. I will say that this job isn't for a beginner really. If you're not at all confident, then don't attempt it, as if you get it wrong it could be catastrophic. Although saying that, as long as you get the setting tools correctly installed, then I don't see how you can go wrong. So you're going to find level firm ground, put the handbrake on, chock the back wheels and jack up the car and put it on axle stands and take the front right wheel off. And I usually like to put it under the car just for a bit of extra security. This is where I located the axle stands, so the car's level. Put something down on the ground to lay on and take out the T25 screws holding the undertray on. And remove. Right, I'm going to open the bonnet and have a look what needs to be done. Obviously the first thing is to take the engine cover off, which is the easy part. The 1.9 TDI engine is quite tight and the cam belt's at this end of the engine under this cover, so there's a lot of things in the way at the top end which you have to take off. The main thing being the engine mount you need to take off to get access to it all. So you want to take the intercooler pipe off first using a pair of plumber's pliers to compress the clips. It'll pull off at the front here and by the EGR valve. Disconnect that little pipe and remove. Now we can see the top right engine mount that we need to take off. The coolant reservoir and the incoming fuel lines are just in the way a little bit. I can easily detach these solid lines, so I can move the coolant reservoir. The incoming fuel lines are attached to the side of the reservoir just here on this clip. Just pull that forward and push down and that will release. Take off the top incoming compression clip using your plumber's pliers again. Pull that out of the way. Then you can just pull it off. Do that with the solid pipe end. I'll take this vacuum pipe off. Just detach it here. And I better pull it out of this bracket. Move it to one side. Just loosen 3 bolts on the top of the rocker cover, 10mm hex, so you can move these solid lines forward. Give you a bit more room. The top cam cover is clipped on with 2 clips, one at the front here, which will detach with a screwdriver easily. And the one at the rear you can just put your hands around and fiddle around with it and detach that there. Then the thing will just lift upwards and out. And to move the lower coolant pipe, I'll need to take the little bracket off next to the alternator. That's a 13mm hex. Disconnect the negative lead on the battery. Detach the electrical connection on the coolant reservoir. And lift up the wiring loom off the little spigots. And take off these 2 top 10mm nuts. And then the 10mm nut on the bulkhead. So you can just lift the bracket up and out of the way a little bit. Now you can get to the little spigot bolts on the coolant reservoir. Take those out. Now we can move the bottle out of the way by lifting the fuel filter up and feeding the bottle underneath it. Keep the bottle low down as you move it, otherwise coolant will pour out of the pipes. You could put a little stop end on that, of course, and then rest it on the other side of the engine below the solid fuel pipes. Now, as you can see, there's plenty of room to get to the engine mounting bracket. But before I do that, I'm going to go back underneath the car by the wheel arch. You need to take the wheel arch liner out, but first you need to detach this little lower quadrant section just underneath the corner bumper. Again, all T25 screws. Take the remainder out from the wheel arch liner, including a couple on the inside of the front wing, and then pull it out around the strut. Put that to one side. You need to take the auxiliary belt off near the alternator using a 16mm ring spanner on the tensioner just here. Pull it back as far as it'll go and then slip the belt off at the top. Then go underneath and take the belt off from there. And remove it from the car. Now we can take this lower pulley off. It's held in place by these 6mm Allen bolts. You might need to put some penetrating fluid on them if they've been stood a while. Take those out. And waggle the pulley off. There's a little locating stud on the lower sprocket which marries up to a hole on the pulley. Put a suitable clean bowl under the drain tap and drain the coolant. Close the valve off. Save the coolant for later. Later on I'll take the water pump out, so I'm just going to put this rag down to absorb any spillages. I will use a bowl, but I just want to save the driveway. So now I can put my trolley jack underneath the sump to take the weight of the engine before I take the engine mount off. And I'm using a bit of wood to cushion it a little bit and protect the sump. So that's in place now, taking the weight. Now I'm going to take this lower crankshaft cover plate off, a 10mm hex. There's 4 bolts here, 2 visible and 2 slightly further up, but you can still get to them with a little wrench. That's those 2, now the top ones that are out of shot. But you can still easily get to these with a 1/4" socket and wrench. You could of course take this off later when you take the mounting bracket out and drop the engine a little bit, whichever you prefer. Take the cover off. This lower cover is just nipped up underneath the middle cover, so you just have to lift that out a little bit and then it'll come off. Now we've got the cover off, we can get access to the timing gear on the end of the crankshaft, which we need to use a special tool like this one to set it all in the correct place, which will be in the top dead center position. In this kit there's 2 setting tools, one for the earlier pump juice engines and one for the later common rail engines, and they are different. They've got a locating pin just here on the tooth casting. There's a little hand wheel that you can take on and off, as you can easily put these in place without the little handle, and then if they get stuck on you can just wind the handle on and pull it off. Here's the little tooth mark there on the second tooth on this one. The common rail one, the mark is in a different place, and that'll line up to a mark on the lower crank gear. The top dead centre at the camshaft end, you line up, use this pin to lock it in place. But both tools need to be located together. And then you've got 1 or 2 other little bits and pieces. That's for the tensioner. I'll leave a link in the description where you can get one of these. So I've also bought myself a white paint marking pen. just to fill in the alignment marks on the castings and on the gear, which might make it a little bit easier to see. So I'm going to set the timing now. You don't have to do this right now, as it's slightly advantageous to do it later after you remove the engine mount, because then you can jack up the car or lower it down just to get it in the right position. So you want a 19mm 12-sided ring spanner or socket. Turn the crank gear clockwise, watch where the mark goes and trace it round till it's nearly 11 o'clock or just before that. Put your setting tool aligning the marks. In this position, and then in a controlled manner, holding the setting tool and your spanner, carry on turning it incrementally until the setting tool drops into the cutout in the engine block. Like so. Now go up to the top end where the camshaft is, and if the camshaft gear looks like this, it's in the wrong position. This is in 180 degrees out, so you'll have to turn the crank gear around another 360 degrees. Now that you've got it in this position, you can insert the pin through one of the slots, locating it into a recess in the head. It's not always easy to see, so here's a mirror. This is a good idea to use so you can see it, and if we have a closer look, you can just about see the hole right at the back that the locating pin fits into. So I'll put that in now. You might find it's a little bit tight and have to adjust the crank gear a little bit to get it in, which is probably due to the belt stretching, as you can see this from the tensioner mark just here. This is supposed to be between the slot. And as you can see, the pin goes all the way in. You can also check you're on top dead centre with the casing mark where it's marked 4Z, and just here, which should align between two prongs on the back. And there's another prong at the top which is aligned to this top hole. Right, I'll take the engine mount off now. Engine mount comes in 3 parts. I'm going to take these 16mm hex bolts out first. Make sure the engine's supported underneath. I could have done with lifting mine slightly higher, as the bolts just released a bit when taking them out, but no harm done. Take those out. Now for the rubber mount on the frame, I'm going to take the whole unit off. It'll give me more room to play with, and that's held on with 4 13mm hex bolts. Once you've released the bolts, you can jiggle the mount out. Now for the mounting bracket plate thing. There's 2 bolts at the top and 1 bolt lower down. So the first thing is to jack the engine up so you can get the top bolts out. Which are again 16mm. And then lower the engine so you can get the other bolt out from underneath the wing. Here's the other bolt here. So you take that out. I found I just needed a long extension on the socket to get that one out. Now I can take the centre cam belt cover off. It's still held in place by another 10mm bolt up here. Take that one out. It's quite a long bolt. That one. Or it seems like it anyway. Oh, it's only quite short. That should just lift out now. Jack the engine back up so you can get this lump of metal out of the way. Good job they made that out of aluminium. And finally we get to take the belt off. Slacken the nut on the tensioner. Then get a 6mm Allen key and rotate it to the left, which releases the tension. And you can see the pointer move to the left at the same time. You can put the pin in now if you want to hold it open. But if I take the idler pulley off, I think I can get the whole thing off then. Idler pulley is a 13mm hex. I used a 1/4 inch wrench and socket to get that out. And this idler's larger than the pre-2001 model. Right, I'll just ease the belt off now. Take that out. The kit comes with new threaded spindles for the tensioner and idler, so these will have to come out. I'm going to put a new water pump in here. Even though it's working fine, you don't want to take all this lot off again just to do the water pump, so it's always prudent to replace that when you do the timing belt. Right, here's a new kit. Let's have a look at it. 2 new spindles and nuts. New water pump. This one's got a plastic impeller. And a new seal. Sticker to put your mileage on it and date. Belt and tensioner. Oh dear, this isn't the right one. Definitely. This looks like one from an early pre-April 2001 model. And the idler pulley is a different size as well. Bugger. So even though I gave my registration number and details, the kit here doesn't fit. So I'll have to get that sorted. Here's the 2 parts that are different. I believe the top one is for a pre-April 2001 model and the bottom one is mine. Post 2001, and the company I bought this from didn't take account of this, so to cut a long story short, they had to take it back and I got a refund. So now I've purchased another kit from the same manufacturer, INA, but with a different kit number. And all I can say is when you order a kit, even with your VIN number or your registration number, always check the parts are the same as what you've taken off, although it's not that easy with the timing belt. So this is the new part number for this kit by INA for a post-April 2001 car, ASZ and ATD engine, mine being the ATD. And it seems that this anomaly just applies to these 2 types of engine codes. So I presume that all other engine codes use this latter kit as well. So something to be mindful of these 2 engine codes. Obviously you only get a kit that applies to your specific engine code. Yeah, this is the right tensioner. It's got the locating tab at the back that fits into a slot in the block. And the idler pulley is the larger type. And the water pump's the same with the new rubber seal. So that's all good. Fasten a couple of nuts on the end of the spindle shaft and then you can remove it. Put the new one in the same way and put it in dry. and tighten to the correct torque, which I'll leave in the description. Put your coolant bowl underneath where the water pump is and take out the 3 5mm Allen bolts. Now grab hold of the pump and shake it loose. You've got to be quite firm with this. And let the coolant run out steadily into the bowl. When you get the water pump out, have a look at it where the mating surfaces are, along with the rubber seal, and you're looking for signs of corrosion. There is a little bit here, and then you can check it on the block against any potential problems. Now I want to clean all the mating surfaces up of where the water pump fits, so I'll get some fine emery paper and go over that. It's pretty clean is this one, there's no rusty bits. You're aiming for a nice clean smooth surface for the rubber seal to mate to. Clean all that off with a rag. As long as the mating surface where the seal goes, you should be alright. I could have cleaned a bit more of the scum off, but from experience it's nice and smooth and it'll make a seal, so I'm fine with it. Put a bit of coolant on the seal so it'll bed in nicely. Refit the new water pump. And put the bolts back in. And tighten to this specified torque, which is 15 Newton meters. Refit the idler pulley. I needed to jack up the engine slightly to get it on. It's a little bit tight up against the chassis. Refit the nut and tighten to the specified torque. And I couldn't quite get my torque wrench on, so I had to do it in a different way. I used a 1/4 inch socket and swivel setup and went through a hole in the frame, as you can see here. And you tighten that to 20 Newton meters. Refit the tensioner. Make sure the locking tab on the back fits into a slot on the block, which is just here, and not easy to see when you've got the belt on. Just put the nut on loosely. Loosen the bolts on the cam sprocket. They're 13mm. So now it moves freely. Leave it in the centre position of the slots, ready to fit the cam belt. Make sure the cam belt is the right way around. Some have some arrows on them. If they don't, I would suggest having the writing that's on them readable from the right hand side. This one comes with a natural bend towards the left. Whether that's intentional or not, I don't know. It might be just the packing. But if I fit it this way, that means it'll naturally lay like that. Not that that's going to make a jot of difference when it's actually working. Hook the belt round the bottom pulley gear. I had to drop the engine to do that a little bit, and then you could do with 2 hands really, or even 3. The idea is to keep it tight on the non-tension side. Loop it round all the gears and pulleys the best you can. Fit it over the tensioner. You might have to pull it off the spindle to do that, and the locating tab often pops out, but no worries, you can put that in afterwards if you need to do, and slide the belt over the top of the cam and inch it on a little bit at a time. It's meant to be quite tight, but don't force it or damage the edges of the belt. Eventually you'll be able to get it on, then just slide it on completely. Make sure it's around all the pulleys and gears, and then you can correctly. You can just see here that the locking tab has come out of the slot on the block. So I took it off again and had another go. And here we are, putting it back on a second time. I think this gives you more idea of how to put it on. I initially started putting it on and there's too much on at the bottom of the cam, so I pulled it a little bit off, as all you're doing is twisting it, and you don't want to do that. So I pulled it off and then I could get it on over the teeth at the top, tight, but it managed to go on without forcing it on, and then slowly push it on all the way on. So that's better, that's on now. Just got to tension it up. Oh heck, it's done it again. It's my fault, I didn't put the little nut on the end of the tensioner. That'll stop it doing that. Right, I'll have to push that back into place. So I just got a screwdriver and was able to push it and then push the tensioner on fully, so it was fully home. Here it is in the slot, so I know that's seated correctly. Make sure I put the nut on before it comes off again. Use your 6mm Allen key to tension it up. Watch the pointer move and you're aiming to lock it in position in that slot. But I found when you tighten it up, it actually moves a little bit, so it wasn't easy to get just right. You can see me tightening it and then it'll just slip forward. There. I found that I had to tighten it up in this position, and then it moved slightly to the right, going into the centre of the slot when I torqued it up. So you initially put 20 Newton meters on it, but that was okay now. That's your first stage, and then you've got to do it 45 degrees after that. So I can do that by just marking on the nut and on the tensioner. So that's okay now, bang on in the middle of the slot where it should be. Now we can tighten the cam sprocket bolts back up, and they're 20 Newton meters plus 45 degrees as well. So that's done now, and it's getting a bit late, so I'll take this back up in the morning. I'm off in for a cup of tea, and I've got my new little brewer's device for my loose tea, which I think is quite nifty. My Auntie Gertrude bought me that. Just make the tea in a separate pot. That way I don't get any leaves at all in my cup. Right, take the pin out. This one's a bit stiff. Just get it out with a spanner. It's funny really, sometimes it goes in easily and then not. It's definitely in the notch though. Anyway, right, take the bottom setting tool out and turn the crankshaft pulley gear around twice for one rotation of the camshaft. Put your setting tools back in and check the alignment again. If all's well, it's still a bit tight. It does go all the way in, you just have to get a spanner to get it out. And when I shine a light in with a mirror, it's spot on in the middle, dead centre. So I'm happy it's all correct. Maybe the pin's just a little bit big. I've never actually used these before, whereas a 6mm drill bit goes in without any bother. Anyway, make what you want of that. Let me know in the comments what you think, whether you think the timing's off at all. I don't know. Have I missed something fundamental? I don't believe I have. I'm just showing you how it is. I haven't faked it. This is a real life belt change. Obviously if it doesn't run right, I'll be looking into the engine diagnostics and the torsion value to see if the timing is out at all, because you can adjust that. So I'm going to put it back together now and then start it up. I'm not going to show you that, I'm just going to jump forward now. I'll put it all back together, making sure you've torqued everything up correctly. Everything is put back just as it was. I've cleaned a few things up, just got to put some coolant back in it and then start it up, see how it runs. Hey, it works. Run that a bit. I hope it's not accelerating. Ah, I forgot to put a pipe back on. Not be causing that. Try again. Much better. Right. Right, I think I'll call that a success. Just got to fill in the sticker, put that on, fill in the details, mileage and the date. Couldn't be easier. And there we go, all done. Oh heck, hold on a minute, put the wrong month in. I have to try and rub that out and do it again. 11th month. I thought that was a date for some reason. That's better. Anyway, the mileage is on, that's correct. Job's a good one. Only time will tell if that's going to be ever replaced. It'll take it over 200,000 miles then. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed that video. Feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. Like, share and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.